way that they would think. So any conversation to understand how people would think, process, and do things was always like fascinating to me. So I guess I was always fascinated with the human brain and um, psychology of things. And I was in a very long-term relationship, very young, from 19 to 26. And when I left that relationship, I decided that I really wanted to live and experience a lot of things. So I started my dating journey. And through the dating journey, a friend of mine, my roommate at the time, were like, wow, there's a lot of bad behavior happening. Why are people acting like this? So I did what I did best, which was always question everything. And we even decided to start doing a documentary together around how people act during dating. Long story short, she ended up getting very sick, so we had to put the project on hold. But this is something that's always just been top of mind for me. So I started reading, consuming, attending every possible conference, workshop, book, speaker around love, dating, and relationship. And through those years, even though I continuously consumed and learned so much, I just couldn't seem to attract emotional available men. So my journey to finding love myself lasted almost 18 years. And it's not until this was like what, till I turned about 38. So from the time I became single to the time I woke up one day saying, what's happening to me? Why am I not attracting, emotional available men? And I was done with the fun stuff, experiencing. I was ready for a long-term committed relationship. I realized that a lot of the stuff that I had learned, I was learning, I wasn't applying it. And what I've come to realize as I started teaching this, and I'll finish my why I decided to do this, is that especially today, we consume so much information because it's so accessible, but it's really overwhelming. And sometimes we just continuously continue to learn and consume new things instead of applying and having someone that can kind of hold us accountable for it. So it's only when I finally had that conversation with myself and decided to apply things that I saw the difference in how things were changing for myself. And I finally ended up meeting my fiance today. I met him when I was 44 years old. So I did meet and attract an emotional available partner very much later in life, but it's because I really transformed and integrated the work that I had learned. And when I met him, I remember saying to myself, I was like, oh my God, it's one thing attracting the right person, but it's a whole other thing being in a relationship. And we've never been taught the skills on what it takes to succeed in a long-term committed relationship. So you could actually be with the right person at any given time, but it doesn't mean that you'll succeed in your relationship. And that's when, for me, my aha moment kind of like went, I had, through my journey of continuously being an advocate of like always learning, taken my coaching certification 10 years. Actually, the year I moved to Toronto, this is where I decided to take it. And I learned a lot more in depth about why I was doing what I was doing, and that I was the common denominator in my own story, because we're often looking on the outside, but not necessarily looking on the outside and understanding the root of why things are happening to us. So when I understood those things, I was like, okay, this is great for me, but I don't think I'm ready to necessarily teach this to other people yet. I need to work on my life a little bit more, because I truly believe as a coach, it's really important to embody and practice what you teach. And everything I teach is from my own personal experience. I don't pretend to teach stuff that I've never experienced myself. And I think that's really important, especially when you're a relationship coach, to just speak from personal experience. So I founded Raise Your Love Signal. COVID helped. I went from, being in the wine industry for 20 years to all of a sudden traveling the world and breaking bread with everybody. So I guess you could say that a quality I had developed over the years as a salesperson was always being very attentive to the person in front of me, breaking bread, listening to their stories. I would love to share everything I had learned with them to say, hey, have you thought about this? I read this. Maybe you should try that. And people would get back to me and say, oh my God, this is so good. I didn't think about this. So I was naturally coaching without even realizing I was doing it. And when COVID happened, I just had all this extra time now being at home instead of traveling the world on a plane every other week that I decided this is a time to kind of explore this. And things kind of like happened and took off very, very quickly. And now I have my book that I released last year on Valentine's Day, which is Raise Your Love Signal, a guide to attracting and keeping the love of your life. Because as tacky as that sounds, it's what we all want when we, are looking for love and we want to attract a relationship in our lives. We ideally want to be with the same person and have really great, successful and healthy relationships.
So let me ask you, Chantal, because you mentioned that you found love at in your 40s. And
Mhm.
I work with women who are pretty much in their 40s to about 60 years old, right? They've been either physically abused, emotionally abused, mentally abused, financially abused as well, which doesn't get talked a lot about. They call it, or a lot of people call it, later love. Did you
Mhm.
think that you would have found love later on in your life when you're approaching the age of 40? And if so, why?
I never gave up hope that I would find someone for me. I guess it was the hopeless romantic in me. And I was so in love with the idea of being in love. And through my own personal journey, I lost my father when I was extremely young. So my first role model as a male figure, it's one of the reasons why I realized that I was sabotaging my own my own love life is that subconsciously men represented that they abandon you. So I was subconsciously choosing situations that I would always stay in control or know they would end. Um, and I still remember those feelings of like loneliness and the desire, the deep desire of wanting to be loved and experiencing what that meant. So I never gave up on that feeling. Um, and even in my 40s, I was just like, and at that point, I honestly felt that because I had worked so much on developing and really getting clear on why I wanted to be in a relationship and the definition of love, because we've been so conditioned and educated around what love is. So we're in love with the idea of being in love, which is very rom-com Disneyfied, right? It's like that whole beautiful romantic story, but that's not what sustains a long-term committed relationship when you're having kids, going through financial difficulties, losing a parent. There's so much more to it than that. So I think when I really got clear and saw a bigger picture, and this started with me not only focusing on what I wanted from a partner, but on a relationship perspective. I started asking myself, like, how do I want to grow and evolve in a relationship with someone that I'm going to be with for 10, 20, 30, 50 years? And what does love really mean to me? And what do I want my relationship with love to be? And that's actually how I started the whole project and the whole program I teach, and even the research on the book was, let me ask myself, what does love actually mean to me? And it's funny because as soon as I started asking myself that question, it wasn't an easy question to answer. And I was like, considering I've been studying and consuming and learning all about this, and I'm struggling answering this question, I can't even imagine what the average person out there is thinking. So my relationship with what love meant versus what I had seen, been conditioned, and learned about was very different now. So I was approaching attracting love in my 40s from a very, very different perspective. So I would say definitely an eternal optimistic. And just because I started growing more into who I was and accepting myself as a person and seeing myself as a whole, and that love for me I didn't need to be defined by being in love or being in a relationship anymore in my life. It was going to be more of an added bonus or butter on the toast, if that makes any sense.
I remember when I had a similar conversation. I'm a little bit younger than you, so I'm not going to say my age though. And in my 20s, I had no idea what the hell I was doing when it came to dating. But I was like, you know what? I want to find love. You know what love looked like to me?
What
A
did it
very
look?
attractive girl. I
Mhm.
was I was a simple man,
Yeah.
right? But then at that time, I didn't know what
Yeah.
the hell I was doing, right? So I couldn't even get an attractive girl. So I was dating just to date and I was going through the motions. And then one day I was like, you know what, Terrain, like you need to understand what love really is. Is it superficial, meaning that it's what the person looks like, or is it something deeper?
Mhm.
And then what I did was I said, okay, let me look around because I grew up without my mother or my father. So I had a similar difficult childhood like you. So I didn't see love in the household. So I
Mhm.
had to see it outside. So what I did was I said, I'm going to ask all the people who have successful relationships to tell me what it looks like and what it is. So I went around and I asked girl number one, guy number two, married couple number three, and I asked all these people. And then what I started to do was when I started to attract better women, they were older just because I was speaking to older people. And they would say, okay, Terrain, you're 25, but in my 20s, I had no idea what I wanted. Now that I'm in my 30s or late 30s, I want this, this, and this. So I had 10, 15 years of future knowledge at my
Mhm.
hands. And then when I began to get involved into this, I started telling people, I was like, you know what? Love, in a lot of ways, it's how you feel. Yes, you want to feel it, but it's more so how does it make you better as a
Mhm.
person? And I think a lot of people miss that. They're like, I feel it, right? And then when you ask them, okay, tell me what you feel, like, I don't know. But on Disney, I saw the rose petals. I saw, the
Yeah.
giggling and
Yeah.
everything like that. And I told him, like, love is difficult. Sometimes you don't like the person.
Yeah.
Sometimes you argue. Sometimes you're in two different rooms. And I'll ask you this question because this is something that I faced, but I want to hear it from you from a woman's perspective. When you were finding out what love meant to you, what do you think were some of the obstacles that not only you face, but maybe some of the people that you assist with in them facing it as well?
So a few things, and that's such a great question. So I like to say, everything that I teach around love and being in a relationship is not the sexy romance story. So I'm teaching you how to be in a really healthy, safe, thriving, I'm growing, and my butterflies have not been there at the beginning, but they grew into my relationship kind of story. That's what I'm trying to teach. So I would say that um so there's a couple of things. Number one, I call it the triangle of love, which is one of the things I refer to in the book. So there's a massive difference between what we think we want, what we actually attract, and what's really right for us. And we spend most of us our time right here because we think we know what we want. And because of how we've been conditioned and what we see on TV and just how the world works, we're often focused on the partner in very, very superficial needs or wants. And I'll talk about needs and wants. That's the second thing. So, for example, I used to be type A, attracted to very type A personalities as well, rugged men, the bad boy, emotionally unavailable. So that wasn't right for me, but I thought that's what I wanted. But, I kept attracting them, but it's not what was right for me. I needed a man that was a little bit more feminine, a little bit, and feminine in his energy, not necessarily in his look, but more down to earth, more quiet, that would balance out, the yin and the yang. We say it. It's like being with someone that's the same as you is not good. We need the opposites to kind of like complement each other. And I look at my fiance today. I never would have given the time of day with, all my old stories and how I used to go about dating and thinking about love. I never would have given him the time of day. It just never would have happened. And how many times have you heard that? And I'm sure that people never end up finishing with the people that they, thought that they wanted. And we see this in matchmaking and data of like arranged marriages. It's one of the reasons why arranged marriages work so well. It's because guess who's setting you up? And I was really surprised to read this when I read it, and it opened my eyes to a whole other level. It's because it's people that know you so well. They know you, they're friends, they're family. So they're thinking about the long term, the value system, what really matters to you, how you are as an attitude, what's going to take to complement you. Where most people that are out there, even like when you're working with matchmakers, they don't have a lot of self-awareness. They don't take the time to ask those simple questions that we've already been through about like, what is my relationship with love? What do I want my relationship with love to be? What really matters? How do I want to grow and evolve in a relationship? Not just have a guy that's 6'2", a woman that cooks and that she can dance and that she's sexy and that, she's like a good sense of humor and he's well traveled and he makes money. Well, welcome to the list of everybody in this world. So you need to take it down much further. And that's the second thing that I see when I take people from here, the triangle of love, and I say, so do you know what you want from, what you're looking for? And they always say, yes, I do. And I say, okay, describe it to me. So this is the typical definition that comes out that I just described. And I'm like, well, how do you want to grow and evolve in your relationship? And what are your deal breakers? So I talk about this in the book as well, where I refer to understanding the difference between wants and needs. Wants are typically very superficial. I need him. I want him to be 6'2", which, by the way, if you're looking for a tall man, you just reduced your pool of who's out there for you to like 6%. Cook, clean, whatever, I want, which is very self-absorbed, where needs are literally like deal breakers. They're like water, air, breath. You can't live without. So one of the exercises that I do with clients, I'm like, I want you to start writing a list of what are the difference between your wants and needs from a partner, from a relationship perspective. And they can actually be in the same columns, no problem. But what we're trying to get to the bottom of is remember what really matters. And when I say what really matters is I keep going back to how do you want to grow and evolve in a long-term committed relationship? Not in the fireworks and the honeymoon phase that are going to happen in the first 3 to 6 months, because that doesn't last. It's like official data. It's like it doesn't last more than a year. So that's when it gets really interesting because people are really conflicted and confronted. They're like, I've never taken the time to think about this. How do you want to have the same value system if you raise children together? What are your religious beliefs? Are they important enough if you do have a difference that you can actually complement each other? Or do you want to just be one-way street? If you guys have financial issues, how do you want somebody to be financially savvy? What's their communication style? I take it really, really more into depth. And I would say that what I'm really trying to get people to get at a point when they're dating, they're not out there to actually look for the outcome, which is one of the things that we do when we go out and date. It's like, is he the one? Is he the one? Could he, is that my person? Versus going out, having fun, making sure you filtered before you actually go out with someone, but we'll talk about that a bit later. But it's like to get to know what you actually really want or what really matters. And you get to observe yourself and you get to observe that person, how they show up, how they act, and realize, I thought this was important, but at the end of the day, it really isn't. And I'll give you an example. One of my deal breakers, believe it or not, on my list was someone that knew how to dance. Like that was for me, I can't be with a guy that doesn't know how to dance. Like, no way. I'm like a dancer. I like had this like fantasy that we'd be like ballroom dancing, salsa dancing. And lo and behold, I meet my man. And one of the first questions I asked him was like, do you dance? And he's like, not really. He goes, I'm kind of, known for having 2 left feet. And I'm just like, do you have rhythm at least? Like, he's like, what do you mean? I said, well, can you like roll a shoulder or something? At least if you can like wave your, and he's like, no, no, not my thing. And completely despaired in my head. Like I remember I was just but I was also at a point in my life where I had decided to do my dating journey very, very differently. So I continued to get to know him. And as I continued to get to know him, other of my deal breakers on my list that really mattered to me showed up, including great communication skills, emotionally intelligent, so emotionally intelligent and self-aware, very confident, not jealous. I used to travel the world globally, so I couldn't be with someone that was always breathing down my neck and not feel confident enough. I was in a dominated men's industry, so I was always with men whining and dining. And at one point, I we were at an event together, I remember, and we're dancing, and I said, I'm dancing. And I said, you know what? You need to give me one dance. And he's like, let me grab one, two, three shots of tequila. I'm giving you one dance, right? And then I realized at that moment that was it really a deal breaker? Because that's not what's going to make or break my relationship in the long term. It's how he supports and honors and respects me in my desire to dance. So, meaning he took those three shots of tequila. And today, until this day, it's like if you want to go dancing with your girlfriends, I'll drive you, I'll bring you, or, or while at a wedding, he'll make the effort and give me the one dance. So I think that people really have to remember what really matters. And it's a very different and not very romantic discussion, but it makes the world of a difference on how you can build for the future together.
That reminds me, when you mentioned the wants and the needs, that reminds me of a former friend, and I can share this story because she hates me now. So she had this thing where she wanted the guys to be 6 feet, like you mentioned, right? But she's like, I want them to have big hands. I was like, what is this obsession with big hands, right? So
Right.
she's like, 6 foot tall, big hands. And then I was like, okay, so if you find a guy that's 6 feet tall, big hands, but he's homeless, would you date him? And you can see the wheels in her head turning. She was resisting to say no. She just couldn't say no. And she was like, I was like, the answer is no. You can call a friend. You can get a lifeline. The answer is no. But then you raised something that was really good is that you started off with something that was a deal breaker. Then you said, you know what, this person has these other qualities which are really good. Do you then think that we can evolve what we look for in a relationship or in a partner going forward as we get older, maybe know a little bit more?
Definitely. I think, the beauty of aging and learning from our mistakes. And that's why I always say dating is a really important part of the journey because you get to observe yourself and make sure you don't repeat the same mistakes you did in the past. Because as human beings, we love to repeat the same friggin' mistakes. We just hate change. Like it's like our behaviors or patterns, especially if we've never worked on our self-awareness and we don't know why we're doing what we're doing, we keep repeating the same shit over and over and over again. So that's why I say one of the like main keys for you to succeed in relationship is to develop your self-awareness. Why do I want what I want? Why do I need what I need? Why do I get triggered when someone says this? Or why do I get reactive? Why was I attracting unemotionally available men? I didn't realize what my issue was until I was 38 years old. So of course I couldn't fix my problem. So when you are aware of why things are happening or you're reacting or getting triggered or why you want things, that's half of the battle already done because you have the awareness of it. So now you can start transforming, changing, and applying little small daily baby steps to rewiring your brain and old behaviors and patterns that you've had for most of your life, which is, everybody often wants the magic blue pill. So this is the beauty of aging, if you take the time to learn and observe yourself, since the self-awareness, I think you really start seeing what's really important. And for me, I would say the thing that I've noticed was all the superficial stuff that I used to look for, including height and status and looks, were no longer important to me. I remember the last 6 months prior to meeting my fiance, the one thing I wanted was to have a good conversation. I don't care who you are, what you look like, how you dress. I want you to have a really good conversation. I like to have in-depth conversation. I call it the philosophy of life, la philosophie de la vie. So I wanted to be able, if I was going to be out with someone, to actually just have a good conversation. So that was something I had really decided that was important to me. So you do not attract or start looking for the same people the same way. And I even remember my one of my healers that I've worked with, because I work with numerous witches and healers and all you can think of. And she had suggested to me this new online dating app. And I was like, listen, I've been through all of them. I've been single long enough. Like, no, I'm not doing it anymore. And she's like, I think you should visit it. It's new. The pool of men is like really good quality. And she's like, if you're going to do it, you need to bring in a new approach, meaning start looking at men you would have typically never looked at. So again, it goes back to the triangle of love, big difference between what you think you want, what you attract, and what's right for you. And look for the different energies. And I decided to try that. And sure enough, it's I got on the app and I met my fiance. I talked to two guys and he was one of the two. And he was an older man. I never wanted to date older men. Actually, that's not true. I always wanted to date older men, but I can never seem to draw them in for some reason. So I decided to try everything different from what I had tried. So I do believe the wisdom of life, if you've chosen to learn from your mistakes and you're able to do an inventory of what has worked, what you realize that you've done in relationships in the past that hasn't paid off, and what were your behaviors in that relationship that didn't pay off, and you identify those. And it's like, how am I going to change now going forward in the future to make sure I don't repeat those same mistakes? You change everything in your approach on how you do. And as you're starting to date, you pay attention. Am I going back to these old ways of doing? Like, for example, you could be a people pleaser. So when you start dating, you're so obsessed with wanting to please the person because you want to be liked so much. So you lose yourself. You start forgetting, I actually go to the gym 3 times a week. What do you mean? You want to see me on the nights that I go to the gym 3 nights a week? And then you start compromising and dating this person on the 3 nights a week that you actually typically go to the gym. So you're people pleasing in a very negative way because you're forgetting to put yourself first.
Why do you think then so many people don't reflect inward to find out what needs to be fixed, but they more so rage outward and blame others on what's going on?
Honestly, I don't know if I'm the right person to answer this question because I've always questioned from inwards. Like I always reflected myself. Like it was always I don't know, a natural thing for me. I think a lot of people are afraid of what comes with that and dealing and being confronted with the reality and having to do the changes. And as I said, as human beings, we just hate change. It's just we're so comfortable and set in our own ways. So we often really have to hit rock bottom to actually finally, or as the expression goes, find the dark night of the soul to actually come out and like seek the light once and for all. I really find it's too bad because there's so much value. I think back as soon as I started really diving and understanding where this behavior, why I was getting the results I was getting, where this came from, is just like, I understand everything now. And it's not my fault. It's not my fault at all. So I get to empower myself and do something about it. And I think that's where people get stuck too. They often want to do things on their own and don't ask or seek for help. And I mean, today, the beauty of a podcast like yours or social media is that there's access to so much information. We're having conversations like these that were not even had 10 years ago. So I definitely feel when I talk to early 20s um, people, the conversation is very, very different than people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, 100%. But yeah, I really, I really don't know why people don't want to dive and dig a little bit more.
I'm the same way. Like I shared, I was reflective in what I needed to do. And if I look at my state of mind then versus the state of mind of, let's say, people who are resistant to that, who say that, you know what, the Chantels out there, they have to change to fit me instead of me self reflecting, saying that, okay, what is it that I'm doing to attract the wrong person? I find a lot of times anecdotal is that they know the problem is them. But instead of confronting it, they will ignore it. They put it in a closet, close the door. I'm not going back there. It's like that dirty, smelly shirt, right? It's just in the corner of your closet. You smell it, you know it's there, but if you don't see it, you can ignore it. And I feel bad for a lot of people that way because they go into each relationship, whether it's at work, whether it's family, whether it's romantic, and the more they fail at it or the more it fails, the more upset they get, the more jaded they get,
Mhm.
right? So they bring it out into the world, and then you have this poor man or woman who's a pretty decent person, right? They meet them, they're like, oh my God, now they're damaged. They
Yes.
go on, right? And they see the damage that they're doing. It goes from me, it goes to Chantel, it goes to Chantel, it goes to someone else, and we're just spreading it like a virus.
Yeah.
For the people that you work with, then, how do you help them to soothe what they've gone through in the past to find success in their future relationships?
So first of all, it's really embracing your past at the end of the day because your past has made you who you are today. And I'm the perfect example. I mean, all the pain and the learnings and everything I've done, I wouldn't be able to be teaching what I'm teaching today and be in this kind of beautiful relationship, which I never even came close to thinking it existed because it was not even my vision of what love was or what I thought it could be. I was still living in that fantasy of like Disney. So for me, it's learning to make peace with what happened because you really have to forgive yourself. You have to forgive the people that came in and out of your life. And, I did this exercise myself. I remember it's actually one of the books that I've never finished reading, writing. It's still like on the back burner. But I looked at all the key relationships or meaningful men that came into my life that I was trying to make it work or like, being a psycho around the stuff that I would do to like completely convince them to be with me and seduce them and name it, I've done it. And I look back today from the eye of like, wow, those people for who they've become and what has happened, and even where I am at today, it never would have worked out. Like I was really trying to convince myself in those days. And then I look at the lesson that I taught or I learned from them and how I grew from it. So being able to do that exercise, one is so soothing and beautiful because you make peace with a lot of it. It's nice to be able to see it from the outside and say, I don't understand why I'm not good enough. And I remember being the victim a lot where it's like, I don't understand. I'm doing everything right. Everybody's telling me I'm beautiful, I'm intelligent, I'm successful, I got a great personality. And, it's like, what the hell? Like, so that's when you have to be able to question yourself. And for me personally, when you get to that point when you're able to do that, this pays off in every area of your life, not just in romantic relationships. It's just you're able to observe yourself from being in an argument with someone or when you get triggered in a situation, instead of attacking and blaming others, I'm always saying, what can I learn from this? How can I grow from it?